So do we know each other well enough that I can be a little bit candid with you? As a financial advisor for over 20 years, one of the things that broke my heart and frankly led me to start my YouTube channel is when I saw my clients that had plenty of money to retire early, drag their feet and being indecisive and not making the decision. And then later, right, I was a financial advisor for over 20 years. For some of these people, I saw it 10 years later, 15 years later. And later they had a health issue. And things like strolling on the beach, what I'm doing here in Costa Rica, super simple for me to do today, would be much more complicated for them to do. They had a stroke, a cancer diagnosis, a heart attack. Maybe they felt kind of tied to the regional hospital in case they had another heart attack. And those years, those carefree years that they could have, they unnecessarily sacrificed and unfortunately would never get back. I don't want to see that happen to you. So let's go for a stroll. Let's talk about it here. I've got a beautiful setting here in Costa Rica at this beach town called Santa Teresa, with watching the sunset behind me. It's never a sunrise with Azul because I'm not a morning person. It's always a sunset. Okay. So, the transition is hard. Admittedly, it's hard. Even though I knew what was going on and I had the experience of having lived through other people's lives, for me, the transition was hard. I did not retire until I was 69 years old. Frankly, I could have retired a few years earlier as well, so mea culpa. But unless we're going to work until the day we die, we all have to go through this transition. So why not do the transition sooner rather than later? Now that I'm 6 months on the retirement, I do kind of wish I had done it 3, 4, maybe even 5 years earlier. I think 40 is too early to retire. You still have a lot of life in front of you. I'm not a fan of what people call the FIRE movement, financially independent, retire early. I am a fan of the financially independent, getting that earlier in your life rather than later. What I'm not a fan of with that movement is people sacrificing, maybe not having kids because they want to be in the save money, even though they otherwise would have kids, or giving up the youth of their youthful years, right? I'm talking about taking full advantage of the youth of your senior years, but you definitely want to take advantage of the youth of your youth years because those can be really fun years. So, just thinking through what are the things that we're giving up and knowing just how easy it is to postpone things. After after being in a career for 10, 20, 30 years, we're good at our jobs. It gives us a lot of kudos. It feels good. Many times we're paid well for what we're doing and it feels easy and fun. So why would you give it up? You give it up. And frankly, it takes a leap of faith. You give it up because you believe, you have faith that there's life on the other side of this transition that's even better. Having control of your calendar, being able to do what you want to do. You can still do things that are mentally challenging, that give you purpose. You're going to have to find those things. They're not just going to be handed in your lap, but they're available to you. And what we don't know is what life's going to look like on the other side. And once we give up our job, once we retire, and I'm not saying to do this before you're financially independent. I want to be clear about that. But once you've had a plan done and you're like, you know what, Azul, I can actually do this. Financially, I'm okay. And I have a little bit of a buffer above that. Nothing I'm saying here is financial advice. I don't know your situation. But once you've talked to a financial advisor and you're at that amount, then, what are you sacrificing for? The reality is with many of my clients, they had told me years earlier, hey, Azul, when can I retire? I'm getting tired of my job. But then once they hit the number, and it's like, you can retire whenever you want. Then it starts to change and people say, wow, I really like my job. Well, that's great. I'm glad you like your job. And if you love your job, some people are meant to keep working. But I would argue that the vast majority of us, there's a life on the other side of working that once we're there, once we go through that transition, we're going to be glad that we're there. And we're going to, like me, wish that we had more time in this phase. I mean, this is a very magical time in my life. And I want you to experience the magical time in your life when you have the trifecta. You have your health. You still have your health. I'm not going to have my health forever. We have our health. We still have time in front of us, and we have enough money, right? When you're young, you have plenty of health, you have plenty of time, but you don't have money. And so we trade our time. Sometimes we trade a little bit of our health. We work more hours than we should in order to make money. But, when you're in your 50s, and if you've done a financial plan, you have enough money, and you have the money, you have the time, you have the help. We want to treat that as a very special time. We don't want to kick the can down the road and say just one more year. I've done videos where I've shown what the impact of just one more year is. And oftentimes it's not as big of a financial impact as people think. The joke in my industry is for every just one more year you make, you do, for every just one more year that you agree to work, you gain 3 years on your retirement plan. And that sounds raper. If you hear me out, where do those 3 years come from? So the first year is you have one more year that you don't need your retirement assets to support it. So that's 1 year. The next year is you're 1 year older. Another year has passed. But the third year that you gain is the joke in the industry, and admittedly it's not very funny, is you die 1 more year sooner because of the stress. But I do think there's some truth to that. I don't know if it's a year, but I do know that the longer I worked, the more stressful my job was. I saw it with my clients as well. As we get older, we don't handle the stress as well as we did when we were younger. So what are we sacrificing? Are we sacrificing for something meaningful? And I have seen situations where, you know what, it is meaningful. The company has offered something very substantial, and it may very well be worth working 1 week. On the other hand, it may not. And so in that situation, why do people postpone? Oftentimes it's because of the uncertainty. The uncertainty can be scary. It's like, for those of us that went to college, when we left home and we went to college, we left everybody that we knew. The example I like to use is with my oldest daughter, and she left home. The whole world that she knew was in the house that she had grown up in, and she had to leave that behind. All of her friends, everything she owned fit into her 2 suitcases. And as scary as that was for you, I can guarantee you that after being gone for 6 months, 8 months, she never wanted to live with mom and dad full time again. She was glad she made that transition. And that's what I see for people, is they're happy to once they make the transition into retirement, which can take 6 months, oftentimes the first 3, 4, 5 months, retirement feels like vacation. And then the hard work settles down. And you've got to do this transition into your new life. But once you do that hard work, once you've invested in your new life, then it's, boy, I wish I had more time, more healthy years in this new life. And I want to see you take full advantage of that. I also want to see you take full advantage of the time until you get to retire, which is why I made this video here. 8 things to stop doing in your 50s and 60s, in order to enjoy your time until you get to retire. I'll see you in that video. Thanks for watching this one. Bye, bye.